Okay, right, hello and welcome back to another video. So today we're going to be returning to the particle cave project that I was working on before. Now it's been quite a break, unfortunately, in this project, but it does give us a really nice opportunity, I think, to go through the sort of review process. Now this is something that I would do in all of my projects, but it's really quite key, or quite a nice thing to do when you're returning to a project after a long time away from it. So if you've got a portfolio piece that you're returning to before you do some job applications, for example, then I would really kind of go through this process of really formalizing the review process. So being your own art director. If you're working in a group and you've got someone who is doing your kind of art direction for you, or someone more senior that you can work with, that's fantastic. But even if you're just working on your own and you're just working on kind of a portfolio project piece, it's really good to kind of like take off your working hat and put on your art director hat. And in my experience and in my opinion, it's great to do that out of the engine. Like obviously every time you're in the engine, you're looking around, you're seeing things that need doing. But by formalizing the process and kind of rendering out a video or exporting screenshots, you're then able to kind of like mark up on them and kind of like work outside of the engine. I think you're able to see a lot more of the little details and pick up things that you wouldn't necessarily see if you were in engine. So cool, so I'm using SyncSketch. This is a free website that you can pay extra for additional features. Not connected to it in any way, but it's a really useful tool to do this kind of work, and it's collaborative as well, so you can invite people and you can create a video call, and then you can kind of do your markup either by drawing on the screen, and everyone has different colors, and it allows you to really communicate clearly, rather than being like, oh yeah, that bit over there near the top left, what bit where, what are you talking about? No, you can just draw on the screen and kind of like communicate that way, and make notes and leave things for yourself as well. So let's say I wanted to increase the glow here, I could kind of like draw a little scribble. Maybe I could use some actual shading, and you can see how, depending on how artistic you're feeling, you can really kind of work as much or as little. And you'll see from my notes that we'll look at later that I'm not into the sort of drawing hugely artistic renderings. They're just little notes for me, but that's fine as well. Cool, let me just get rid of all this. So this is the original cinematic. So the only thing I have done since the scene was seen last is go in and recreate closely as I can the original camera movement. So I've got a real side-by-side view of what things were like before and what things are like now. So I'm just going to play this through, and we'll see the original intent. Again, we're going for a remaster, so we're not going for a completely one-for-one remake of the scene. Some of the lighting here is very dramatic. I'm going to try and get a bit more of that into our scene, but it's also a little bit unrealistic. It's quite stylized. It's very dark areas, very bright areas, and so we're going to kind of balance that down a bit as well. But there's a lot of niceness, or a lot of real nice qualities to this that I want to kind of take and bring into our scene as well. So let's play the last bits out now. Now this is going to be a full 3D scene that's available to download as well. So if you are making just a cinematic, or you're just making screenshots, there's no point putting time and effort into an area that isn't seen in the game, isn't seen in your screenshots, isn't seen in your final submittables, whether that's submitting for uni work or just kind of like what you're going to put on your ArtStation. But in this case, as a fully downloadable scene, we are going to have to sort of polish up everywhere. But I think having the cinematics and looking at some side-by-sides are really going to help with identifying areas that need work. So this is our scene, and you can see I've kind of picked a shot where the camera's the same. Instantly the lighting is very different, and I think I'm going to try and recapture some of the original blues in our scene. Not so stylized, but I think at the moment we've kind of lost that color temperature and that color kind of vibrancy that the original had. So just turned off the markup. There's an option for that down here, and we'll go through those later. And I'm just going to play through sort of where we are. So I've done a little bit more work with the camera. Unreal now has better things like depth of field, and so I've added a bit of that sort of shot by shot. But you can see how I've tried to match the original as best as possible. A few extra things I'm seeing now. I've done a pass of markup already, but just kind of rewatching the same video again and again and again. Each time you watch it, your eyes are drawn somewhere else. So the first time you watch something through, your eyes are going to be drawn to the areas of high contrast, movement, lighting, things like that, which is great. But then once you've rewatched it and rewatched it and rewatched it, and you should obviously rewatch your own work, really get in depth with it, you'll see things that you didn't see before. And we'll go through this process a few times, so I'll re-render this video out after having done a pass, picking up all the notes that I've got here, and then next time we'll do another video, do another pass, do another video, do another pass. And it's nice to be able to keep them as records as well, so you can go through and you can really see the development over time, which is quite nice. So okay, so let's just go through the notes we've got. So you probably, well, good luck if you can read my handwriting. This is all handwritten with a mouse, but again, it only needs to be a note to me. And so we're talking about the blue glows, getting some more blues in here, darkening this light. You can see in the original this is much darker, and all the lighting's over here, which really does change the kind of like appearance of the piece or of the shot. And then picking up a few highlights here on the chain, and so doing that sort of second or third pass lighting where it's not the main lighting of the scene, but you want to emphasize something. We can have a few little spotlights or little point lights, area lights down here, picking that up as well. Moving forwards, there's a button for this. I did start color coding my notes, so using red for lighting, sort of yellows and greens for mesh work and then particle work, but at some point I just stopped doing that, I'll be honest. Again, they're just notes for me, so that's fine. A few more drips. Bringing this camera forward, there's definitely some drips coming down from the ceiling. I believe I made some drip particles, you can't really see them, they're a bit blurry, but definitely a bit more dripping down here to emphasize that. Again, a bit more with the ripples as well, seeing what's there in the floor. Moving on to the next shot. Lighting wise, obviously hugely different. Again, here we've got, let me just use the laser pointer, so it's drawable, but it'll just go away after a few seconds. But here we've got a real kind of like bright with darks in the middle. Whereas if you look at what we have in our scene, we've lost that brightness in the middle coming out of that corridor, and these firelights are really big, and we're losing any of that kind of darkness between them. So I'm going to try and push the lighting a bit more back to the original intention. Some things have obviously changed. The fire here was just a brick wall on fire. Not quite sure why or what was burning here, and so we've kind of justified that with the brazier. The particles obviously need some work. That will happen, and then maybe a bit more of the connection down here, sort of bedding that in a little bit, but we'll do that as well. So there we go, fire, and that says bedding, I think, not sure, can't read my own handwriting. Big part missing from this sort of next part of the shot, I think, is the reflections. There's some really nice reflections happening here, a bit more water on the floor. Now UE4 didn't have great reflections, but we do now, so we'll get some really nice kind of planar reflection type things happening here, I think, which will be really nice. But you can really see, yeah, the models and quality of what we have now is much higher, but the lighting is really not working for us in terms of that original intent, so we're going to definitely spend a long time revisiting that. Bumping up the particles around the orb. It used to be quite a lot of particles. There used to be a huge kind of circular burst of little dots. We're going to refine that a little bit, but it definitely needs more than it's got here. And you can say here, yeah, puddles and reflection is what that says. If you can decipher it. Cool. Moving on, next shots. Again, the lighting, we've talked about that. We are here getting some real dark areas, so there is a bit more of that darkness happening, but blues at the top, the highlights coming down and sort of the sunlight from above. It might be the light angle from the directional light. Here it's more that way, and I think in the original it was more kind of straight down, and that's giving us more lighting over here that we're going to try and tweak and adjust. Maybe try and colour match a bit better as well. This is a bit warmer, whereas I think here it's much more cooler tones. You can see the warmth of the light here, or the oranges in the light here are much more reduced. So we're gonna work with that. Let's just jump forwards. It's a single frame that these sketches get written onto, and then you can go through and you can delete them later and what have you, and you can just jump back and forth between them, which is quite nice. Go here, massive amounts of bloom up here. We're not going to do that. That doesn't really work. I mean, rocks aren't going to be that shiny, and there's not that much light that it's going to reflect. As I said about a bit more the stylized type of lighting that we get here, to have this much light on the rock here, it would be reflecting and bouncing all the way around. You wouldn't be this dark over here, and so you really do have to be a little bit more realistic, or we're going for something a little bit more realistic. But there's still some nice bits as well here. So we already highlighted the highlights here on the chain. Not sure if the material just isn't shiny enough. Maybe it needs a specular mask. Well, it'll be a roughness mask, I guess, these days. But areas where the the rusty bits have chipped off, or even just a bit of lighting there as well, just to sort of bring that chain forwards off the background. Something we'll have a look at doing. Fill this hole in the background. I don't think it was in the original. It's not in the original shots. There's just a little hole in the environment over there. But little bits like that, it's very easy if I'm watching this part of the video. I mean, maybe less so when it's here and obvious. But if your eyes are looking at the waterfall or the movement and the high contrast in the lights, you might easily skip that. Whereas pausing it, single frame. Okay, yeah, it looks good, looks good, looks good, looks good. Oh, there's a little hole down here. Let's mark that up and make sure it gets fixed. Cool. Moving forwards, next shot. A few bits in here. This water, again, has been revisited, but actually a lot of the white water has been lost. It kind of blends away into the rocks a little bit here. So I'm going to try and add a bit more of that sort of foaming white splashes and particles falling down here. Maybe another pass on the actual water surface itself. Maybe a bit more light coming in from the top. That's probably worth making a note of. Light. You can see how I can like draw little sketchy bits, get some surface light coming in there, and then the God rays as well. So here, this is just a volumetric light, but I think we're going to back that up with some planes with animated materials on as well. So here, the amount of light coming in at the top and all of this is a huge amount versus what we have here, which is currently just quite soft. More highlights, picking up that front and background, even if they're just little small lights, trying to separate the environment. And then God rays, as I just drew and said here. Moving on to our next shot. So we start here around the corner. There's a lot of light being reflected off these surfaces. Might be we need to make them slightly wetter or slightly smoother. Here it's a very, how do we say, very matte kind of surface. If you've got all this snow around, we need to maybe have a wet area where the snow has melted but it's still wet and icy, and so having a pass or maybe some vertex painting or something around here, and then this transition as well. At the moment, very solid snow and then not snow, and so we're going to have to kind of break that up a little bit. Maybe a bit of bloom. At the moment this is all very visible, so let's scribble that out. Right, bloom, something like that. Try and replicate again this original intention where you're inside the cave, your eyes are dark or adjusted to the dark, and then you get to the edge, and then maybe the bloom's there to start with, and as you go around it starts to sort of adjust a little bit. Because we're going to be exporting a cinematic as our final, or as part of our final, we can do some post-process and cinematic only things, and then we can also put some stuff in the level to do like eye adjustment and eye adaptation in different parts of the world. So again, lighting wise, big difference in kind of fogginess out here. It's a very foggy scene out in the distance, but up close is maybe a bit more, a bit clearer. And so you can see, we can see quite a lot of this back wall here. So trying to kind of replicate that a little bit, lose some of the mistiness. And there's a lot of particles doing the work here. So if I just play this for a little while, there's a lot of sort of particles rather than just being a generic fogginess. There's lots of these kind of edges, and you can see the movement in the air. Whereas if we look at what we've got, there's lots of the little dots, but maybe less of that kind of like big clouds. And so trying to replicate that as well. Cool. Yeah, fog. So all the things I just said, just concise it, you kind of summarize it down in a single word, just saying fog. And then final shot, just bringing the camera in a little bit. And so the shot opens here on a camera, a bit more close up on the statue, and we're quite far back, so you can see how we can't see his feet or anything like that. We want to be right up to his knees. And there we are. So we'll try and do that as well. There we are. So the ending of the shot is a bit more where the start of the shot is. Now obviously we don't have the original camera data, so we're having to kind of like eyeball this a little bit. And so it's not going to be perfect, but when I can try and replicate, especially sort of first and last shots in the scene, where we can, we're going to try and do that. Is there one more note? Yes, snow down here, fix the lights, all this kinds of things. So yeah, so we don't have to pick up every little detail. Maybe we come along later and we say, right, actually we want to have little snow piles up here. There's snow piles on these. There should probably be snow piles up here as well. But you keep working in passes and keep working in details. The way, or the most efficient way to work is always sort of on the biggest, most visually impactful things. And so that's what I've kind of highlighted here. The lighting is going to make a huge difference. I'm going to make sure that's a sort of priority moving forwards. Things that are still unfinished, like this fire, that I've never done a pass on this fire. It's just a placeholder that I chucked in a while back. So that definitely needs a pass as well. And then we'll go through this process again. We'll look at it, this cinematic compared to the old cinematic, then the original cinematic, and try and work out what little kind of polishy details still are required. And basically you repeat that until you run out of time. Projects are never finished, they're only abandoned, or artwork is never finished, it's only abandoned. And so I'm going to try and be realistic with my deadline and not just keep polishing forever. But hopefully in the next few weeks, 2, maybe 3, depending on how much time I get to work on this, we'll be able to go through and finish this up, which is pretty cool. All right, yeah, key takeaway basically is reviewing your own work, doing it formally, doing it through either screenshots and paint overs or video. Collaborate with someone if you can. It's always good to get extra eyes, even if it's just a friend of yours who hasn't been involved in the project at all and they've just got kind of opinions. They'll see different things, they'll notice different stuff. Always good to have other people's opinions involved, and you don't have to do what they say, you can always ignore them. But it really does make a difference. Obviously I'd been through this process once, and just going through again, even just now live, I've seen so many little bits where I'm like, oh yeah, I'll make a note of that, I'll make a note of that. Cool, awesome. Hopefully that is helpful, going through this process and going through the sort of the idea behind the process. I'll try and get an update out in the next few weeks with all of these little changes made. And yeah, if you've got any questions or comments about this scene, or if you want to know how some of the techniques in this scene have been done, do check out the courses on Gumroad and Udemy. And I'll see you all next time for another video.